Good little snapshot of what we're planning to do tonight. I'll give an intro and I'll just very briefly touch upon the Galloway Glens scheme, just for any of you who don't know about it. It's Galloway Glens scheme that are hosting this event tonight. And then I'll hand over to Ted Leeming, who's a climate campaigner, co-founder of Natural Power, and obviously the massive achievement of being the chairman of the Galloway Glens Landscape Partnership Scheme, which I know he's particularly proud of, to try and set the scene on the climate emergency in Dumfries and Galloway. And then moving through to the Council's Environment Champion, Councillor Dougie Campbell will give a snapshot of how he sees his role and for priorities in that role. And then we have the sort of main event, Sarah, if I can say that, which is the a presentation from Sarah Farrell, the Council's Climate Emergency Project Officer. And then moving on to Stuart Ferns, who's no less of a main event on behalf of Drax, talking about a perspective from the Galloway Hydros, what they've learned from the Galloway Hydro scheme. And then after that, we'll then have the discussion between the speakers tonight, but particularly building on any questions that you've got. So please do throw questions in to the chat box as we go through the presentation. There we are. I just want to give a wee snapshot of the Galloway Glens scheme. Some of you will have heard the phrase Galloway Glens before, some of you won't. So we're a landscape partnership scheme covering the entirety of the Kendee Valley. So we've got Coocoobury down at the bottom here, Castle Douglas, round Loch Ken and up to Carsfairn at the top here. Large portions of Galloway Forest Park, of the UNESCO Galloway and Southern Ayrshire Biosphere, the Dark Sky Parks. We've got lots of accolades in the area. And what we're trying to do is use the special qualities of the area to try and drive economic activity and sustainable communities, which is probably what ties us into tonight. Our primary funder is the National Lottery Heritage Fund, which we're very grateful for anyone who's buying lottery tickets. Thank you so much. Please buy them responsibly, but please continue to buy lottery tickets. And that allows us to support the work that we're doing. And so the aim is to connect people to their heritage, supporting the local economy and support sustainable communities. And we've recently passed a halfway point. You may have seen some, we've done a bit of press coverage recently, and we did an animation video, and we've done some stories and things attached to that. So halfway through our 5-year scheme, running to March 2023. If you don't already, please do follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and things, and we put out newsletters as well to sign up to. So setting the scene, I wonder if I could hand over to you, Ted. Would you mind saying your point from your position? Hopefully you're able to cut in.
I can certainly say a few words. Can you hear me?
I can.
All right. Hi everybody, and certainly from my perspective as well, I'd like to just reiterate what McNabb's already said and thank everybody for joining. We were chatting just before we came on, and we were saying that if this event had been in a village hall somewhere up or down the Galloway Glens, we'd probably have got 25, 30 people along. And here we are, sat at certainly well into the 70s, if not the 80s by now. And it's very exciting for myself. I've been involved in this field for over 30 years. I started as a volunteer looking at ways to address climate change. And really at that time, there was very little knowledge in the general public about climate change. It was really just the activists who were protagonists, just driving the political agenda, if you like, and bringing about policy change, early policy change at the time. The way that has changed is absolutely huge, and to be seeing this now, the speakers on this list at a local level and acknowledging a climate emergency is hugely exciting, but it also brings with it huge challenges and huge responsibilities for us all. I think the concept of climate change itself is relatively straightforward. And it comes down to the release, the heating up of the atmosphere as a result of carbon and other gases in the atmosphere, and that actually changing our global climates. So the concept is relatively straightforward. The bit that scares me is that if we're to abate this, if Sir David Attenborough is indeed to be believed, we have a decade to not just talk about this and think of ways that we might deliver the solution, but to deliver the solution, because according to the science, a general consensus is, with the majority of scientists, that in about a decade's time, we will reach what they call the tipping point. And if we haven't solved the issue by then, it will be impossible to reverse the changes that have started to happen already. So that gives an indicator as to the significance of the discussion we're having today and the importance of finding solutions that are acceptable to everybody. And that's the tricky bit. That's the bit that I don't begrudge Councillor Dougie Campbell to have to resolve with at the local level. It poses very difficult questions. At what point do people say we've done our bit? What does we've done our bit mean? At what point do we acknowledge that nothing comes for free in our consumer lifestyles, and that if we change the way that we work and live, then we won't resolve the problem? And these are some of the questions that we need to be not only asking, but also answering as we move forward. With respect to the council itself, I have to say that the net zero by 2025 target that they've set, I believe to be thought leadership at an international level, not only recognizing there's an emergency, but setting a target to deliver part of the solution at a local level is very inspiring. And I have to say, I commend their bravery in setting themselves such an agenda in these times. I don't think it's going to be easy to deliver these answers and to reach that target. And what will be required is that everybody comes together as stakeholders, argues the points, discusses them, and finds compromise solutions that will address what is the primary issue. Some more interesting speakers to really outline what the challenge is, some of the things we're going to be looking at, and then open it up, most importantly, to everybody to start and continue the debate, which we'll be having over the next several years at least. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you so much for that, Ted. And speaking of Councillor Dougie Campbell, could I hand it over to Councillor Dougie Campbell?
Thank you very much, McNabb. And hi, folks. As McNabb said, I'm Dougie Campbell, and some of you will know me as one of your councillors in D and Glen Ken's ward, and I'm delighted to take part in this event tonight. As we've heard from Ted, we really are reaching a tipping point. But I was struck by his comment about Dumfries and Galloway Council being brave. What I would have to say is I do still have a lot of sleepless nights. We've got a huge challenge ahead of us. But we really do need to act now, both locally and globally, to halt a global temperature rise beyond that tipping point, because failure would be a catastrophe. So do we really have any choice? That is a question that I would ask. Now, I'm not an expert on climate change, and I don't pretend to be, but what I do know is how to affect change in public bodies. I know change can appear slow. However, we need to get the building blocks in place to give effect to that change. So in June last year, I wrote what's become known as the 12-point plan, and this resulted, to my huge relief, Dumfries and Galloway Council declaring a climate emergency with the objective for our region to be carbon neutral by 2025. And due to the nature of our region, I think this is something that we can achieve. I was subsequently appointed as the Council's Environment Champion, and I'm chair of the cross-party working group on the climate emergency, which is overseeing the implementation of our 12-point plan. The cross-party aspect I've referred to is crucial. We need our response to be beyond party politics and not to be derailed by any changes to council administration in the future. My role as Environment Champion is to ensure there is a strong link to the council for individuals, groups and organisations so that people's voices are recognised, and it's really, really important that they are. As well as focusing on climate change, my role also includes a focus on the environment and biodiversity, and this is something that's important in the debate, for example, over forestry planning, and is built into our council's new strategic priority. It's vital that everyone plays their part in the pursuit of our pursuit to be a carbon neutral region. We need to work in partnership, as Ted said, and both with people who live and work in the region, but also with organisations and bodies that share our strategic priority. There are currently some tremendous things happening in Galloway right now that should be acknowledged, and we're fast becoming seen, I think, as the movers and shakers at a national level. So I want to congratulate organisations such as Galloway and Southern Ayrshire Biosphere, Loch Ken Trust and Galloway Glens Partnership, who have organised this event tonight, for their commitment to tackling climate change and on their achievements to date. And it's been great to work with these organisations in my role as Environment Champion. But whilst Galloway is leading the way, I want this to be replicated right across the region. And I can tell you that the work that we're doing in the council is also being closely watched at a national level, so no pressure there. I'm proud of that, but not complacent. We have a huge task ahead and we need your support and strong partnerships. I really want tonight to acknowledge young people in our region. Our youth councillors have chosen climate change as their top priority and are active both practically in terms of activities such as beach cleans, but also developing their own climate emergency strategic action plan. And let's be brutally honest, if it wasn't for young people such as Greta Thunberg, our school strikers and our youth councillors, would we be at this stage that we're at now? We might, but they've certainly got my attention. And huge congratulations I have to add to S6 at Kirkcudbright Academy, excuse me, on winning an award this week from the World Land Trust for fundraising a whopping £4,140 to be used for protecting habitats and wildlife. And there's no doubt that our young people here in Dumfries and Galloway set the standard for others to follow. The coronavirus pandemic has resulted in the council being on an emergency footing since March to protect vulnerable people in our region. But work on the climate emergency has continued over the last 7 months, and Sarah will speak shortly to provide you with the details on that progress and what lies ahead. And finally, from me, a 19th century Scottish biologist, sociologist and town planner called Patrick Geddes, who was ahead of his time when it came to environmental issues, coined the phrase, think globally, act locally. That message has never been more important, and we all need to act and act fast. So enough from me. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the rest of the evening, and I'll be delighted to answer some questions later. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much, Councillor Dougie Campbell. So if I could just, I'm going to hand over to Sarah now.
Okay, thanks very much, McNabb. That's brilliant, and thank you to Ted and to Councillor Campbell for their introductions too. I'm delighted to be here tonight, as everyone else is. I'm delighted to see so many people join us. It's really, really encouraging. So thank you all very much for being here. So I'm just going to go on and talk about our net zero carbon region by 2025. So as has already been mentioned, we have a huge challenge ahead of us. The climate emergency declaration was declared in June last year, as Councillor Campbell has already mentioned, and supported by a 12-point plan. We have the most challenging target within the UK in Dumfries and Galloway. So as Councillor Campbell also mentioned, we are being watched, if you like. People are looking to see how we're going to handle this, how we're going to take it forward. Very interested to work with us, which is encouraging. A lot of the other Scottish local authorities are really interested in and how we take things forward, and beyond that as well, some of the English ones too. So that's really encouraging. So the 12-point plan, as Councillor Campbell said, the creation of the cross-party working group came out of that plan, and that is again very encouraging that we have such support within the council. Our climate emergency officers working group was established, and we have internal decision makers within the local authority that sit on that group. The officers working group carry out the requirements of the 12-point plan, and as Councillor Campbell said, the working party oversee the implementation of the plan. So again, 12-point plan had stated, they would employ an officer, that was myself, and I was employed on the 16th of March, the week before. So that in itself was a challenge, we thought at the time. However, it has worked out extremely well. We've been able to plan the very exciting and interesting journey that we have ahead. So what did we do? The first streams that I looked at was a regional baseline emissions inventory, because until we know where we are, we obviously don't know how to act on that. So we've had an emissions inventory pulled together. It is in the final stages at the moment, and alongside that we are developing a strategic plan and route map to 2025. As I say, they're in development, and we hope to have them complete by the end of the year, and we'll have a better idea of exactly where we're going. We do have an idea. We know agriculture is big in our area. It's a big economy, and obviously transport emissions are pretty high because of the rurality of the area. The council itself also has a plan for the local authority, properties, etc., as well as the regional goal. Alongside this other work, we looked at a carbon literacy training. So we have delivered carbon literacy training to key staff members across the council and elected members. The training itself provided us with a Carbon Literate Organisation Bronze Award. So we are the first non-metropolitan local authority in Scotland to achieve that award, so we're very proud of that. The other thing that came out of the 12-point plan was a 5th council priority, which I haven't mentioned on the slide, but has been mentioned in the other presentations. And again, we're very proud to have that council priority in place, because it means then that it shows the commitment of the council, it shows leadership, and it means that every activity within the council has to abide by that 5th priority, shows a commitment to our net zero regional target. So how do we do this? We need to obviously engage with partners. We've got some fantastic partners across the region, a lot of fantastic work going on. A sample list, because I couldn't possibly list them all, are some of the industries, businesses, farming, agriculture, etc. I can let you read that yourself. I don't need to read it all. You can see some of the people we're working with: Scottish Power Energy Networks, Scottish Fire and Rescue, etc. NFUS are very important for us. Natural Power have been a fantastic support. So have Drax and all the other ones that you see mentioned there. However, it's everyone's responsibility. We're all responsible, and we all need to make a change. So think about how you can help, what you can do to reduce your carbon footprint. There are, again, a number of projects across the authority that are already ongoing, have been for some time. The Galloway Glens is an example of that, as McNabb has already talked about. Other initiatives we have, and as I say, it's a very short sample because there's such a lot of good work going on. But within Dumfries and Galloway, we have the Chapel Cross project. That's supporting the development of green energy production, storage and distribution solutions. We have the Borderlands Growth Deal, developing an energy master plan to support the investment in green energy across the region. Within the council, we are installing additional electric charging points in most of the regions, working in partnership with other organisations to do that as well. We're looking at other renewables. We already had some installed and we are taking that further, taking it forward as much as we possibly can. We're looking, for example, at solar farms on former landfill site, which is quite an exciting project. We're looking at district heating systems across the region. The curbside recycling rollout that started in Wigtonshire and I believe will be rolled out to other parts of the authority. It's all fantastic work that's been done. The Galloway Glens partnership we've already mentioned and have been mentioned by the others, as has the Galloway and Southern Ayrshire Biosphere. These organisations have been going for a number of years and have already been helping towards reducing our carbon footprint and looking at sustainable methods, sustainable activity. The Climate Ready Ken project is a very exciting project as well around the Lough Ken area to support sustainable commitments and decarbonise the area. Again, that's going to be a wonderful project I'm involved in as well, and hope to replicate that going forward. So we're all in this together, as we've said. None of us can do this on our own in isolation. It takes every single person and every organisation to make the change. So as my slide tries to put it, it's you know, the more people that we can get involved that are being active in reducing climate emissions and building the confidence in people to take this forward will result in a significant impact on our carbon footprint. We are looking at a citizens panel, and that should have been developed probably before now. The constraints of COVID has held us back on that one as well, just with resources, etc. So if we can have input from as many people through a citizens panel as possible, then that would be extremely helpful. We need everybody out there to have an input and to take action. Okay, so what can you do? Examples of what you can do. You can reduce your own carbon footprint. All of us can do something. There are carbon footprint calculators for individuals and for organisations. I've put an example of one up on my slide there, which is the WWF footprint calculator. There are many things, many different calculators online and many different organisations giving really good advice. You should, if you can, and it's been mentioned already by Ted, you should have a look at Sir David Attenborough's documentaries. Some fantastic stuff out there. The BBC's Climate Change, The Facts that he has written, and also A Life on Our Planet, which is on Netflix, is a fantastic documentary. It's got many fantastic documentaries on there. So there are things we can do, things within your home, things regarding transport, which I'll come on to on my next slide. So you need to think about projects that you can do and activities that can make the change. Stop the effects of climate change and reach as high as you can to save our planet. How are we going to do that? Looking at waste recycling, looking at energy reduction, your travel and transport, How do you do that? Have a think about, how feasible that is to reduce the carbon. Water conservation, particularly in the Dumfries and Galloway area, I think is really important. Energy generation, there is masses of opportunity within Dumfries and Galloway for energy generation. There's lots of it going on, lots of it still to be done. New technologies, look at the new technologies that are coming out. There's a lot of really good stuff out there. And what I would say is think out of the box. Think as widely and broadly as you can, but do take action. Take action now. And you have the support through us, through many others across the region, to make these changes. I'll leave you with that. It's our planet, it's our children's planet, it's their future. And we really need to think about that. We've got a huge job ahead of us here, a huge challenge, but together we can make a difference. Thank you.
I'd like to now hand over to Stuart Ferns. I hope you can see my screen. Can someone put fingers up if they can see my screen? Yep, cool.
Okay, thanks McNabb, and good evening everybody. Just a background about myself. I've worked in the energy industry for about 32 years now. For the last 22 years I've worked at the Galloway Hydro Scheme, so I covered the Galloway Hydro Scheme and the Leeming Hydro Scheme on the River Clyde. Prior to that, I worked at various thermal and nuclear power stations, Torness, Hunterston, Cockenzie and Leeming power stations, and also I've worked at Crookens power station as well. So I've worked at a lot of different sites, and I've seen a lot of different things and different ways of producing energy. I joined the energy industry in 1989 when it was SSEB, so government-run business, and then shortly after that, in 1992, they privatised the electricity industry, so then became Scottish Power. Shortly, then we were taken over by a Spanish company, Iberdrola. And then 2 years ago, we were sold to Drax. So, which seems to be the way with the energy industry. They constantly evolve and change. And we've seen the energy industry changing with climate change and the requirement to provide more cleaner energy. But it's been a long process, and I think there's still a fair bit to go. Again, good evening everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to speak about the role of the Galloway Hydros and its contribution over the last 85 years and its future as we transition to a net zero society. So climate change is one of the biggest challenges of our time, and we welcome the Council's ambition, and we want to work with others such as the Galloway Glens Landscape Partnership to realise this vision for our local area. We need to work together to realise a positive vision for a net zero world, which often also offers opportunities for our communities. This is particularly important when we continue to grapple with the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Council's ambition fits with our history and with Scotland's global reputation for leading renewables development, which started with hydroelectric schemes such as the one here in Galloway. The Drax hydroelectric scheme was built in 1936 and provides a clean and renewable source of electricity for 77,000 homes. It also provides high quality jobs for 27 full-time staff and ongoing work for local contractors and businesses throughout the year. So the scheme mainly generates power when there are peaks in electricity demand and when it's raining heavily. And to do this, it operates a combination of small and large storage reservoirs throughout the scheme, from Lochdoon in the north to Tongland in the south. And water is managed on a daily basis to ensure the small reservoirs are full for the tea time peak demand period, and the large reservoirs are managed over the year to ensure there's sufficient water for compensation flows and fish passes in the summer, and to ensure there's sufficient storage capacity for storing flood water in the winter months. Galloway was the first scale integrated hydroelectric scheme to be built in Britain and consists of 6 power stations, 8 dams, and a network of tunnels, aqueducts and pipelines. At its peak, during the construction, more than 1,500 people were employed in the project. As the operators of the hydro scheme, when we think of the climate emergency and what it is we need to be doing to reach net zero, we think across 3 key themes. Firstly, continuing to support the energy transition by generating clean energy. Across Scotland in 2019, over 90% of electricity generation was met by renewables, and around 16% of that was hydro. Dumfries Galloway has the UK's highest proportion of connected renewable generation relative to its demand for energy. So a lot's been achieved, but challenges remain. We know that to meet net zero as a community, we need to generate even more electricity from renewables to support the decarbonisation of other sectors, such as transport and heating. Hydro remains important, but other renewables are increasingly relied upon to generate clean energy to meet our demand. In 2019, Scotland generated almost 5.4 terawatt hours via hydro, the equivalent of powering more than half of Scotland's homes for a year. Hydro, however, can play an enabling role to support other renewables such as wind to come online. Hydro can help provide storage, as we do at Galloway and Cruachan and Oban, and stabilise the grid by providing services traditionally provided by thermal power stations. This is important as we need to accelerate our transition to clean and renewable energy sources. Looking beyond the power sector, it's clear that other sectors now need to accelerate the decarbonisation, such as heat and transport. Electricity has a role to play, but other technologies are also needed. Secondly, ensuring the safety of our operations in the context of climate changes, which are already having an impact. Annual rainfall over Scotland has increased in recent decades to a level of about 13% above average for the early decades of the 20th century. Our own gauging stations have recorded an increase in average annual rainfall of around 30% since the scheme was built, and we've experienced 3 of the biggest flooding events in the history of the scheme in the last 7 years. This is something we take very seriously as the operators of the hydro scheme. Drax have been heavily investing in the flood risk management studies, plant upgrades and staff training in recent years to make sure our assets and procedures are robust enough to deal with the changing climate and to inform and support local communities and key stakeholders like the council, the emergency services and SEPA during serious flooding events. The primary concerns during such extreme weather events are stakeholder communication, reservoir safety, and ensuring we can do all we can to reduce the impact of natural flooding. Large reservoirs at Lochdown and Clarendon Shaws help to significantly reduce the impact of flooding because of their large storage capacities for holding water, which can then be released in a controlled manner when the flood has subsided. And finally, operating in a way that's sensitive to the nature of the emergency that we are facing. The Galloway Hydro operates in a beautiful natural environment, and given the impacts of climate change, we have a responsibility to ensure our operations work in harmony with the natural environment. We do that by working with partners, but also through direct work with our own staff. This involves working in partnership with organisations like the Galloway Fishery Trust, the D District Salmon Fishery Board, RSPB, the Galloway Glens and local community councils. So I hope this was a helpful summary of what we're doing at the Galloway Hydros, and I look forward to tonight's discussions as the council's work progresses. Look forward to engaging alongside others to realise Dumfries and Galloway's net zero ambition by 2025. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stuart. The rainfall data there was particularly stark, so a very interesting presentation. I just wanted to wrap up with a couple more formal slides and then we'll open it over to the broader discussion. So the takeaway points from what we've covered so far is that I think that Sarah is looking to seek input from a range of sectors, whether it's the private sector, public sector, third sector. And I think that part of the point of the event tonight was to try and show was to try and draw together these different sectors and try to introduce the concept of the different sectors working together, and trying to craft a Dumfries and Galloway Council response. Really, it's a sort of local response to this global challenge that we're facing. So I wanted to put in, and Sarah consented to this, I should stress, but I want to put in Sarah's email address there just for contact going forward, because I think this event really is only the very start, really. Sarah's recently in post, and try and build discussion going forward. So if you know groups across the region who might be able to input, whether it's ideas or activity or anything like that, then I've got Sarah Farrell's email address there. And questions. So brilliant. We've had some absolutely brilliant questions through it, and I do not envy the person who's got to try and moderate this section of the event. There's one question that comes up a couple of times. I just want to jump to first of all, Sarah. I wonder about how can you turn an organisation like the council with, was it 6,000 employees? How can you plug what you're doing into every aspect of the council? And I don't know if that's a sort of starter question to think the challenge ahead of you there.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge, and we're all aware of that. The council itself has to lead by example, and will lead by example. They have set the council priority, and the target of a regional net zero carbon by 2025. The officers working group was set up specifically. It was influencers across the council in all the different departments. So yeah, they've been trained on the carbon literacy training as well. They're all certified now. They have a great understanding. There's some fantastic projects going ahead. So if we can, engage with these senior influencers across the council that have teams, then that has to be surely transferred all the way down. Policy will be changed. I think there's a mention in the chat there about procurement as well. Procurement are also looking at our policies and the way we procure things in the future. That is work that is ongoing and will transpire and certainly will comply with A, the 12-point plan, and B, the 5th priority for the council.
Cool. And is that something, Councillor Campbell, from your point of view, is the challenge as well, is to sort of agitate and to affect that change within the council? Is that something that happens on officer level as Sarah and you as sort of elected member?
Yeah. Sarah's correct in that. I mean, the strategic priority is significant in that it now requires everything that the council does to be linked to the climate emergency, and that's whether what we're doing and how we stop doing things that have an adverse effect, but what we need to do to achieve our net zero ambitions. And Sarah mentioned the training and the senior council officers who are actively involved in looking at their own sort of areas of work. But what we need is strategic leadership, both from the council leadership, which is there, and we need it from the council's executives and chief executive, which is also there. But we're fast reaching the point where it's not about talking, it's about doing. And that point is coming in January, when we hope to launch our strategic action plan. We are going to be heavily relying on funding coming from the Scottish Government to help us realise our ambitions. But the Scottish Government has made that commitment in terms of its own climate emergency declaration. So things are starting to line up, and it's a work in progress, but we are making progress.
Thanks so much, Dougie. And we've got a question here that comes up a couple of times, primarily aimed at you, Sarah, but any other people involved, is to what extent is energy generation in the region taken into calculations? So if we're aiming for net zero, how do you incorporate or acknowledge energy generation in the region?
Yeah, well, that is counted within the methodology that is being used to calculate the regional emissions inventory. There will be some that may not be included in that, but we will capture that in the strategic plan. So if I'm very clear, if we can count it, then we can report on it, we can monitor it, and we can affect change. If we can't count it, then we have to note why we can't count it and what, you know, impact it does have. Very often it's a positive impact, and for whatever reason we are not able to count it within the specific methodology. The methodology that is being used is the Bayes methodology for their statistics that come out, which can be quite general, but we are adding in local information, and that is why the process is taking quite some time to pull together. We are engaging with, you know, NFU for local statistics. We will, you know, be engaging with other local, you know, getting their local wind farm information, etc., to bring that as local as we can and monitor and affect change locally. Some of the figures we have are rolled into national figures. An example of that is the M74 that goes up through Dumfries and Galloway. That is under UK statistics, and we don't have local figures for that. So that goes in as a, you know, a UK statistic, if you like.
And a related question, I suppose this is probably to Dougie and Sarah really, but the related question is about the balance of investment in green infrastructure particularly. So particular examples coming in about sort of walking and cycling infrastructure, but also looking at retro insulating older housing stock and rural electric charging points and things. So to what extent will your focus be on the adding to the region of or improving the infrastructure in the region, and to what extent is that fall under other remits?
Shall I go first on this?
Yeah.
Yeah, so green infrastructure, there's a lot of work been ongoing over the last few months by our transport section in terms of increasing the infrastructure around charging points. In terms of housing stock, that's an interesting one, because a lot of people think that the council still has direct control over social housing, which we don't. They're all under the control of regional housing partnerships. However, housing partnerships are under the spotlight as well in terms of, you know, for example, retrofitting. And particularly around new builds as well. So a lot of the housing agencies are now actively looking at all the new builds being passive houses. They've got a programme in place through a grading system for retrofitting. But we see housing agencies as one of our key strategic partners. But we have a department within the council that has specific responsibility for working with the housing agencies. So there are a range of things that are not directly under our control, which we are influential in. And there are other things where we do have control, and it's about how effective we are in accessing funding that comes from the Scottish Government to assist, you know, people and communities in the region to adapt to sort of transition away from reliance on fossil fuels, whether that be cars or heating systems, and adopt new sort of new ways of living that have less impact on emissions.
Yeah, if I could just add a little bit to that as well, just to follow on from what Councillor Campbell has already mentioned. So the electric vehicle charging points, for example, I have spoken to Scottish Fire and Rescue. They approached us asking whether they could partner with us to install some of these in the rural areas. So that is how partnership working is really happening at the moment. Of course, I would pass them on to our transport department. They will work closely with our fleet department to install these, and I know they are doing. So people are, you know, partners within the region are approaching us as much as we are approaching them. At housing, I had the Energy Agency on last week. They have the Energy Efficient Scotland Fund, or the Energy Savings Trust element within their organisation, and they were asking, you know, how they could help with our route map to 2025 and what our ask would be.
So it's as much about visibility of your role, really, then, isn't it? It's that it's got to draw the people together.
Yeah. Which is good.
Yeah. So we at the Galloway Glens don't like to duck a challenge, but there's a couple of questions about forestry here, Sarah. I'd love to ask you as well. So how does forestry feature in the you pulled together regarding carbon sequestration? Or is there, how does it cross your desk?
Again, that will come through the emissions inventory. We need to see how that pans out, and that hasn't been fully developed at the moment. We hope to get that very soon and see where we are with it and where we need to go. The forestry sector we are just starting to engage with over the past week or two, so that, you know, hasn't gone as far as we would probably have hoped at this point in time. I must admit, I'm not frightened to say I struggle, because I'm the only officer at the moment dealing with this. But, you know, as many people as we can, we will engage with, and certainly forestry, as I say, is something that we're looking at the moment, but we don't have a lot of detail on yet. Cool.
Thanks for that. There's a question here about how this challenge can be turned into jobs. In my experience, climate projects rely hugely on volunteers to make them happy. There's a place for volunteers, but they're being left to shoulder too much. Do you think there's a question there about sort of, what's the word, uncosted mandate or unfunded mandate, or whatever the phrase is, isn't it? It's the hardest part is going to be to try to make sure there's people to actually action some of the changes that might come out of your data. Do you think that's right?
Well, actually, yeah, I feel quite strongly on that. I think Dumfries and Galloway, and I'll ask Councillor Campbell to say something in a minute as well, but I feel that Dumfries and Galloway has a huge opportunity here for green jobs, green growth. I think there's some fantastic opportunities for businesses to take this forward. We know we have skills gaps in some of the technology that's coming forward, but, you know, I was on a webinar today. They were talking about, you know, people who have got gas boilers, and I know that's not common across Dumfries and Galloway being so rural, but oil is the same, you know, and the engineers that are already trained in these the infrastructure that's there, we really have to look at retraining to renewable energies, etc. I think that there are a lot of skills, but I think there is definitely still a skills gap there across Scotland, if not the UK. As for green jobs, I think we've got a fantastic opportunity to take green jobs forward within Dumfries and Galloway. I'll ask Councillor Campbell his thoughts on it.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sarah. The council commissioned a report a year or so ago called 10,000 Voices, and it was a report that gathered the data from our young people across the region. And one of the startling things that came out of that report was that a quite considerable number of our young people don't see their future in Dumfries and Galloway because of job opportunities now, and skilled job opportunities at that. Now, it's great for our young people who go away to university and pursue their career, but it'd be good if we got some of them back, and we'll do that by having opportunities within the region, and the economic and job creation opportunities through pursuit of carbon zero status are definitely there. It's about how we capitalise on that. Now, the council are involved with a body called the Dumfries and Galloway Economic Leadership Group, And if Jeremy Sainsbury from Natural Power was here tonight, he could speak in great detail because he's involved in that group. But they are currently looking at opportunities through the pursuit of carbon zero status for growth of businesses within Dumfries and Galloway. In the renewable sector is an obvious one. And they are working with Dumfries College as well, who Dumfries College, incidentally, they declared their own climate emergency, and the work that they are doing there is fantastic. So we have the economic leadership group, and also the development of Chapel Cross through Borderlands, so that the site of the old nuclear power station, that is going to be really, really important for the region in terms of our green credentials through research and development and technology advances that we are hoping to encourage to be located at that site. And as I say, that's subject to ongoing work through Borderlands. So it's difficult to go into that in any more detail than what I've outlined. But I predict that in the not too distant future, Chapel Cross is really going to provide the impetus for the incremental growth of employment opportunities, green employment opportunities in Dumfries and Galloway.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry, Ted, did you want to come in?
No, I was just going to say maybe I could just come in to give a green company's perspective.
I mean, we haven't got Jeremy Sainsbury here tonight, but we have got Ted Leeming, I should say.
Well, I can't speak as much as Jeremy on this subject, but I can give a general overview. We started Natural Power in 1996, two guys in a spare bedroom. It is the green revolution that now sees Natural Power employing 430 people, I think it is at present, across the globe. We've got, out of the Dumfries and Galloway office, we've got over 100 people on our books. The green revolution we do not see going away. And the opportunities, not just for renewables, but in all elements of this sector, will be huge. It's going to be a big area of growth across the UK. It is seen by government as part of the green recovery, post-COVID green recovery. So it's in our gift to take the opportunities in all elements and sectors. And we have to take initiative, we have to take risks to do that, but I think the opportunities are there.
Cool. I was trying to be clever here and group questions together, but it's escaping me slightly and I'm concerned about time. So I'm just going to run through the questions as they come. Apologies for any repetition. Daphne, I don't know if you can hear me. I saw you were answering a couple of questions. Thank you so much for that. Feel free to answer any more because there's plenty of questions coming in. Can I push you slightly on the active travel, walking and cycling element? Sarah, to what extent do you see your role as having a connection to the active travel in the region?
Yeah, active travel is definitely something that we will be heavily involved in. We have obviously active travel section within the council, officers that deal specifically with that, and I know there's a lot of work being done there. There's an awful lot being done on, different methods rather than using cars. I think there's like your electric scooters and things like that are available now. Within communities, your transport, your buses, etc. Again, they're looking at electric vehicles as far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm aware, sorry. And
is this all factored into the calculations and looking at net zero? Is this something
that has all been considered? Yeah. When the calculation has been placed, so the methodology has been pulled together, all of these stakeholders, all of these key people within the council and externally that needed to be consulted with have been consulted with, yes. So that should all come in to the baseline emissions, which, as I say, should be available for us pretty soon and should be factored into the strategic plan.
Cool. There's a comment here about the Langham community buyout. I hadn't considered that, but I suppose there is actually a carbon capture angle to that, isn't there? It's great news to everyone in Langham, but I suppose some of these initiatives could lead to some carbon capture or carbon benefit positions. We've covered a little bit about how procurement, particularly through the council, and trying to change the council processes and systems to try and support this carbon approach. A question here about, does the regional baseline emissions inventory include emissions from the food system? These are not included in Scope 3 calculations globally, but are a very important factor locally. Is that something you're able to speak to, Sarah?
I don't have great detail on that, but certainly the food sector, the agriculture side of things has certainly been considered. If it is something that we have the data for, it will be included. If we don't have a good local data, then it will be national data that will be included. But you know, we will be noting in the strategic plan of what is happening locally, and you know, whether we can counter it or whether we can, and what positive impact it does have on the region. Again, any sort of input there, we're quite willing to listen to, but the methodology, as I say, does take in stakeholders involved in that field.
Cool. The question that comes up a couple of times here is, to what extent can you draw a perfect circle around Dumfries and Galloway in isolation from everything else? And to what extent are we drawing products being made elsewhere that we're drawing into the region or are leaving the region? And I suppose it's something you're never going to 100% master, but have you got any thoughts that you're finding in the job about that, Sarah?
Well, again, we're going back to the base data that is given us Dumfries and Galloway statistics, if you like. But we do look at M74 was an example I gave you earlier. Some of these emissions will be ours, some won't, you know, but that is counted nationally rather than locally. So we note that. We've got ferries as well coming into Cairnryan, going back out. Some of the emissions will be ours, some won't. If we can count that, clearly count it, then we will. If we can't, then we will note it. But that's as much information as I have at this present time for you.
On a slightly non-sequitur, sorry, Sarah, this is sounding like I'm all giving questions to you, but obviously welcome for other panel to jump in if you want. A question here about a green supplier of electricity for the council. I don't know if that's something that's ever crossed your desk.
Yeah, definitely. The council are involved in a national public sector contract. I would need to check within the council to see if we were on 100% green energy at the moment. I'm not sure on the answer for that, but within the national framework, there certainly were opportunities put forward for that, and I'm not sure what came out of it because I'm not wholly involved in it at this particular time. I was at one point in my career, but I'm not at the moment, so I can certainly find out about that. But the national contract is, I think it is a 4-year contract, which I think it was 2 years ago it started, so it's got another 2 years to run. So whatever we're in just now is where we will be. And we can I'll certainly be pushing from my point of view that we go 100% renewable energy from now on, if we are not already, which we may well be. I would need to check.
Cool. Brilliant.
I was wondering if I could maybe roll back a wee bit on around food, if that's okay.
Oh, please.
Yeah, it's just a couple of things that the council are involved in. So the council has a food and drink strategy, and that's all about sort of promoting the brand of food and drink that is obviously produced in the region. And there's an opportunity there for us and around what is the provenance of the food that we consume, where does it come from? And I think it is important for people to start to think a lot more about where their food does come from, and to encourage people to buy locally. And that will support in itself job opportunities within the region. And also issues around procurement. All our school meals are produced using locally sourced food products, which I think is an excellent initiative. And there are a lot of opportunities for us around the food and drink sector, but what we need to do is we need to support our industries and buy locally. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you so much. I think what we're going to do is we're going to take the chat away, and we'll have Sarah and I will sit down tomorrow and run through questions that we've missed and things, because obviously this is a rather brilliant level of interaction. Thank you all so much for this. We'll get through as many as we can. I'm just conscious it's going to start getting light in a moment, so we have to try and balance these things correct. A comment that's come up a few times is about district heating schemes. And while I'd love to ask you a particular question about district heating schemes, but also broader, really sort of ambitious projects. And so, yeah, do you see the scope within the remit to shoot for the next level of what could be quite exciting in terms of heating schemes and things, Sarah?
Absolutely. District heating schemes are something that I'm very keen on, and it is something that we've worked with Natural Power on over the past few years to look at feasibility studies, etc. We have looked at various options. There are various options within Dumfries and Galloway. Taking it forward is more difficult just because of infrastructure, funding, etc. But it's definitely on the table at the moment. We have looked at a district heating scheme for the town centre. We have looked at innovative solutions for that. We've looked at tapping into the hot sedimentary aquifer within Dumfries and Galloway. We've looked at sewer source heating for the district heating system. We've looked at drawing water off the Nith and heat pumps, etc. There are various different options still around, still on the table, that we need to consider and take forward. It's something else that, as I say, is a really exciting project. Lots of opportunities, and we need to look further into that. I have a meeting this week. In fact, I've got a meeting this week and another meeting that I need to organise regarding that very topic, to try and bring firmer proposals to the table.
I'd love to ask Ted whether district heating schemes have passed your desk at all, or sort of the more ambitious projects like that.
It's on a larger scale. Natural Power is generally involved in larger scale projects. District heating, particularly where it's new buildings, is something that can be incorporated into the design elements of a new estate or something like that. And it can be a requirement delivered through policy for all the houses to be net neutral, as we know now. When it comes to retrofitting, I haven't personally got that much experience in it, although there's people in the team that do.
There's a couple of comments come in. I'm sure you'll love this, Sarah. Comments that Dumfries and Galloway should be aiming to be carbon negative rather than carbon neutral. And I don't know if that's, have you got any thoughts about that, Sarah? I'd love to hear.
Lots of thoughts about it, McNabb. Yeah, I totally agree. I think we should be carbon negative. In the government's 2016-17, sorry, that was Bay's 16-17 report, we were carbon negative, and then we had some deforestation, I believe, and the following year they decided we weren't. So it's one of them in and out situations. Again, we need to wait for the baseline data to be verified and finalised to see where we are there. I'm sure there are huge opportunities to help us on our road without the definitive data. I
Brilliant.
couldn't answer it any further. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Sarah. There's all very good questions. One of them's come in about how do we inspire the next generation of people on this issue without hectoring or waving our finger at them. And I don't know whether there's any thoughts you have about your role in that, because as is often said, children could be described as our future in a number of ways. And so, yeah, is there any thoughts on you just about that?
Fantastic. Yeah, I love working with the kids. I've done that over a number of years. I often tell a story, you know, about kids I've worked with in a previous role regarding eco schools. The kids are super excited about it. The kids really get it, more so than the parents, and quite often we rely on the kids taking that excitement home and engaging with the parents. I do remember, as I say, one event, I won't rattle on because I could talk about it all day long, because I really love engaging with the children. But one event I went to in particular, to eco schools, and they asked me if I would give a presentation to their assembly, and I said, yeah, that's no problem. I said, I'll come and talk to your assembly, no problem. I said, but why don't you do it? And it's about empowering them, and they were super excited to think that they could actually do this, you know. And I helped them with the presentation, I helped them with everything that they included in it. They came up with a whole load of things to engage with their own peers, and it was a fantastic opportunity, you know, for them. And I think that's how we work it. We work with the children at their level, and I also believe that, you know, climate itself has a place to play in every single part of the curriculum for excellence, you know. So I don't think we have a problem engaging with the children, and I think they are our future.
McNabb, if I can come in, please.
Oh, please, yes.
Yeah, it was just to say, when we were looking at the lead officers who are going to be involved in the officer working group, the initial suggestion in terms of education was to send somebody who was responsible for the school's estates, which was fine, and I understand why it was thought that was the right person. But what I insisted on was that we had an education officer on that working group. Now, our schools in Dumfries and Galloway are working to a national programme on sustainability. But what I'm hoping in fullness of time is that not so much motivating young people. I think they are motivated, but it's about giving them the right skills, knowledge and confidence to prepare them for the next generation as they go into the workforce.
Cool. Thank you all so much. I think we're in the last 5 minutes now. So as I say, Sarah and I will review the unanswered questions tomorrow, and we'll be able to send it out as final follow-up for the event. And we'll send out the slides as well. There was a question here about the slides. I'm conscious that Sarah's taken a hammering on the questions there. So I'd love to ask you, Ted, what's the next step for renewable energy generation after hydro and wind? There's a question.
I think that there's a lot of novel technologies out there that could potentially play a role. The reality is that we all, through our electricity bills, have to pay for any technology that comes forward. And currently, the cheapest form and most environmentally forms of electricity in the UK are onshore and offshore wind. So to deliver the climate agenda and the targets that we're looking to deliver, it will be a significant increase in both onshore and offshore, and particularly offshore wind, to deliver those targets. And UK government has already said that. New technologies coming forward, I think one of the exciting near technologies that doesn't involve significant cost will be floating solar, and that could be something to keep your eyes open for in the I would say short to medium as that comes on board. But the dilemma that industry has is it's all very nice doing novel technologies, remote technologies, offshore technologies, you know, wave and tidal. But ultimately, it comes down to cost, because it is the consumer that pays. So it's very much a balance that we seek as an industry.
Cool. And I think, like I say, I'm sorry if we haven't got to your question. We will come back to tomorrow. The one final question I'd love to ask is regarding COP26, and it would be a shame not to mention it. So obviously Dumfries and Galloway here have set a very high standard. The rest of Scotland, as you mentioned, or the rest of UK is watching to an extent. Do you see there's a COP26 angle to your role, Sarah? And is there a potential level of interest there?
Very much so, yeah. I think COP26 is something that we definitely need to be involved in, and I'm led to believe through government that they are interested in us as well. So that's very encouraging. I had spoken to Scottish Government last week, and they had said that you know, that they're certainly looking at who could be involved, and we definitely had a mention a few times. So we need to take that forward. I know yourself, McNabb, I think you have also looked at that, haven't you? And Ted, am I right in saying that you guys as well have looked at being involved with COP26? And I think collectively it'd be really good for us to be there together. We definitely need to be there.
It's certainly something that I think Dumfries and Galloway can do a huge amount on, COP26. And what we were talking about at the Galloway Glens board was how we shouldn't compete across different interest groups, right, but work together. So in trying to maximise any benefits as a region we can get out of COP. And so McNabb actually action out of that to chat with the biosphere and other interested parties and that includes all stakeholders, to see how we can perhaps develop a working group to see how we can best impact COP26.
That'd be brilliant. Do you want to bring Councillor Campbell in as well then?
Now,
doesn't like it.
Go for it, Sarah.
Yeah, I would just endorse everything that has been said. I thought we'd missed an opportunity with COP26, so hopefully it will go ahead next year. You know, but there are huge opportunities for us to showcase what we're doing here in the region, and I think, you know, we've got some unique selling points. We've got what's going on in Galloway, but also I think we have what is developing with our young people. But I think we should also be looking to COP26 in terms of what are the outcomes of that conference, because they're going to be hugely important, not just for Dumfries and Galloway, obviously, but for, or I should say Scotland, I should say, but it will be important for Dumfries and Galloway, and it will be important globally. It's a huge event. I'm delighted it's going to be in Glasgow, and I hope that it really invigorates further the work that is being done now to tackle the climate emergency.
We've definitely got a huge story to tell there, Dougie. I think we've got the first consented onshore wind farm, the first offshore wind farm, with the hydro scheme. That was one of the first after the National Grid, multiple hydro schemes. I would say that Dumfries and Galloway is probably, certainly nationally, it's the capital of renewable energy in the UK, if not Europe. It would be an interesting stat to pull together and put that forward to COP26, because I think that will excite and be interesting for people.
Yep. Brilliant. Thank you all so much. I'm conscious of time. I'm so sorry. There's so much else here. We should be talking about energy storage, the work of the Glencairns and District Trust's Community Action Plan. There's so many other questions we've come on to now. So what I'll do is, like I say, I'll sit down with Sarah and the other members of the panel, and we'll go through these and we'll send it out a follow-up to the event. I just wanted to round off here just with a couple more slides, just to just not because I love the sound of my own voice, but just to try and give the event an element of closure. I love this phrase, we're the first generation to feel the impact of climate change and we're the last generation that can do something about it. I mean, what a stark phrase that is to actually round off on. No pressure there, Sarah. Thank you. Thank you all so much for attending. I think that's been really useful. I've certainly taken some very important notes at this end and I'll circulate them with the panel. I look forward to working with Sarah as much as the Galloway Glens can to try and support Sarah in her role and Councillor Campbell as the role of the Environment Champion. So really it just leaves me to say thank you all so much for attending, and particular thanks to Ted, Sarah, Stuart and Dougie and Daphne, who's been answering questions as well. So thank you all so much for taking part on the panel. And keep an eye on the Galloway Glens outputs with social media and things, because this is something we'll be trying to tease a little bit further, and how can we provide a tangible local answer to these bigger global questions.